When God originally created the world, the process of creation was a 6-day process. On the 7th day of creation, God created the human being, Adam. And he brought Adam into a world that was completed. The terrestrial, the celestial was created. He had a level of intelligence which was divine. He was meant to be an eternal being, to live forever. And he was given a charge. What was the charge? God put him in the Garden of Eden, and he says, you're permitted to eat from any tree of this garden, except for one tree, from the tree of knowledge. Why? Because the tree of knowledge, its fruit, represents good and evil. Good on an absolute level and evil on an absolute level. And the day that you will eat of that fruit, you will become subject to death. You become a finite person. Okay? His wife is seduced by the serpent, the ancient snake in the Garden of Eden, and he convinces her to try the fruit. After she eats of the fruit, she offers it to Adam. Now, before he was ate of that fruit, when he was given the charge, God says, I created this world, it's almost perfect. Be responsible, maintain it, be the caretaker. Because if you don't, you will destroy it. You will destroy what I created. Something that has infinite value, you're going to destroy. And it's all in your hands. Either to bring it to a level of perfection, which is nearly there, but if you choose not to, and you partake of that fruit, you're going to take the world down to a level beyond recovery, that the world cannot recover from the level of deficiency which you will introduce into this existence due to your making the worst choice in the history of this existence, eating of the tree of knowledge. You will integrate evil into your being. So the Ramchal explains that initially it says that Adam, his dimension of person was from heaven to earth, from one end of the earth. What does that mean? It means that his soul, we speak about the physical world is only a reflection of what exists in the spiritual world. The die was cast in the spiritual world, and the energies that manifest themselves into the physical world are only a reflection of the spiritual world. Adam's soul was connected to every aspect of existence, meaning that if he brings something positive to his soul, infuses something positive, he brings the world to a level of perfection. If he allows something negative to enter into his being, like a virus going to the system, he will take all existence down because his soul is connected to every aspect of existence. And every aspect of existence becomes infected with this spiritual impurity, which will take the world to a level where the world will not go forward. The world ultimately will have to be destroyed. And the world will last maximum for 6,000 years. Because each day will be the equivalent of 1,000 years. Which we're nearing that period of time. We're nearly at the 6,000 year point. Right now, we're in the 5,785th year of existence. The year of where we hit 6,000, the world comes to an end. Because to restore what he had done, to bring it down, it takes that much time to bring it back, not to the level of perfection where he was meant to bring it, but to restore it to the level before he ate the tree of knowledge. That hasn't achieved that. And we're far from that. So all the involvements and all the energies that exist in this existence is to address the end goal. What's the end goal? That we should achieve a level of accomplishment to restore the world back to the state that it was pre-sin. To bring it over the top to the perfect level, it's impossible. Because he damaged the world permanently by introducing evil into existence. We'll discuss when that will take place. Every year, so Adam sinned on the sixth day of creation. He was driven out of the Garden of Eden, him and Chava Eve, before Shabbos. The Garden of Eden was meant to be the location, which would have been his location of eternity. Through that garden, by not eating of the tree of knowledge, he would have brought the world to the ultimate level of perfection, and it would have been obvious, what we call the Yichud Hashem, that God, there would be no barriers. It would be clear on the absolute level that God wills every aspect of existence. Unfortunately, because he introduced evil, evil created more than a smokescreen. It actually created an impurity. It's murky, it's dense, it's earthy, and God is not obvious in creation any longer. Before he ate of the tree of knowledge, God was obvious, not on the ultimate level, but no, he's no longer obvious. You have to search, you have to take every level of effort, you have to use every means that God provides to be able to come upon that truth. The Jewish people at Sinai were given the Torah. That is the mechanism that we're able to come upon truth. But to come upon truth at the level pre-Adam, pre-sin, even that is not attainable. And if it is, nothing more than that. Every year, so when was he coronated by existence to be acknowledged as the king of existence? That was on Shabbos. Excuse me. He was coronated on the sixth day of creation. The sixth day of creation. Right? Before Adam, we're talking about unintelligible beings. The animals, vegetation, fish, whatever they were. Angels. Angels have no choice. The human being was given choice, intelligence, endowed with ability that he could go in either direction. He failed. So before Adam sinned, well, who was God versus the world? He was acknowledged as what? As the master of the universe by this intelligent being. This master had dictated him his will. He failed. He was judged, and the judgment was, now you're subject to death, you'll be driven out. Never ever to return, ever. To return that state before, to be able to bring it to the perfect level. Every year, Rosh Hashanah is the anniversary of the day of creation of Adam. We're commemorating that day of creation, that Adam came on the scene, and God himself assumed the role of king, monarch. He was the king of the universe. Adam was the subject. Adam and Eve, they were the subjects of God. God was the king. Every year on Rosh Hashanah, which is the sixth day of creation, we acknowledge God as the king. We are the subjects. We are descendants of Adam. We have to deal and acknowledge what the objective of creation was, to bring about a level of clarity in existence through our positive choices that mankind should see Ki L'Hashem HaMelucha, that God is the sole, omnipotent, being who wills all existence. That's what it's all about. This process is 6,000 years. We still haven't achieved it. We still fail. Nobody's perfect. We're far from perfect. And we continuously fail. If you do teshuva, if one repents, one is able to not only rehabilitate himself, but you even advance beyond to the level of what that you had given up. Because if you do teshuva, which is a spiritual mechanism to remove and expunge the evil of the deed, of the action that was done, to put you on a pedestal, a higher pedestal that you are pre-sin, your own pre-sin. But in terms of humanity, the world has a maximum level that you could achieve. The ultimate level will be reestablished, which initially was the intent of creation. That's only in the 8,000th year when God will recreate the world. In that world, man no longer has choice. The world would be permeated with God's presence, and man will bask in God's radiance for all eternity at the level that he was achieved in this existence. Give me an example. Person studies, he has a capacity, he has a genius mind, and he never studied astrophysics, never studied advanced mathematics. Can't figure it out. But once he goes and he becomes proficient in all these areas, certain branches of knowledge, and he looks at the world, he sees a different world due to his education, due to his experience, due to his analysis, applying that education. He sees a different world. Before, at best, he saw it at a very superficial level. Now he's able to appreciate its value of what's beneath the surface and the applications of what you're able to achieve. And you can appreciate God. If you believe in God, what did he create? He created something that's beyond human genius. It's the unlimited. Why is it so difficult to be impressed with God? Person believes in God. Baruch Hashem, we all believe in God. God's the creator. You believe in the 13 tenets of Jewish belief. And I remember when they sent up the Hubble telescope to take the first pictures of outer space, the first picture was 1,000,000 miles of space dust. You know what 1,000,000 miles is? We cannot fathom what 1,000,000 miles is. Space dust. And this space just kept going. It's finite. We have no relevance even to comprehend what finite is. This is just dust. How many stars, how many galaxies are there? The numbers are unlimited, but they're finite. But within the capacity of human being, which is even more limited, we see it as infinite, but it's not infinite. And you believe in God. God created all this. Do you think we should be impressed? You should be impressed. So why aren't we impressed? The answer is because there's blockage. To be able to internalize something, to absorb it, it's not something you understand with your mind. It goes beyond human intellect. It has to do with experiencing it as a reality. If you don't experience that reality, you have simultaneous other things that you're experiencing. It doesn't allow you to be able to absorb what you're supposed to absorb. The Talmud tells us that if two people read the Megillah simultaneously, you're not Yotzei. Of course, you have to hear the reading of the Megillah. There's a concept known as Trei Koli Lo Mishtami. Two voices cannot be heard simultaneously. because one detracts from the other. As much as we understand what God is, but it's always on an abstract level, because simultaneously, we being physical beings, we have emotions, we have senses, and those senses continuously detract or don't allow us to absorb what our minds understand. And it even creates a dullness. It blurs it, that we can't fully appreciate it. Because we have so many other things going on simultaneous. Why, when a person sleeps, and you dream, the Talmud tells us that a dream, and you have certain type of dream, it's a 60th of prophecy. It's pretty prophetic. Why does a person come upon truths when he sleeps, not when he's in awake state? So Rabbeinu Bachi explains that when we're awake, all our senses are fully engaged. Sense of smell, hearing, speech, everything is engaged. When it's engaged, there's too much going on to be able to detect and sense what exists out there in the atmosphere. When you sleep, everything's dormant. All these energies are floating around. So because the body is dormant and the senses are not functioning at that moment, other than your system, the brain at a certain level and your systems, you have a capacity to appreciate and sense these energies which exist. And as a result, that's the reason why you dream at night. And you could dream truth, because you sense the truth in existence. That's the understanding. That a person can have a dream that has a semblance of prophecy, you're getting the message. During the day, you don't get the message. Because there's too much going on, which doesn't allow us to be able to sense whatever that message is. The yeshiva in Bnei Brak, it's known as the Ponevezh Yeshiva. At one time, it was the largest yeshiva in Israel. And it was founded by the Ponevezh rabbi, Rav Chief Rabbi, because in Europe, in Lithuania, there was a town called Ponevezh. And the Nazis, Yamam Shemam V'Zichram, their name should be obliterated. There wasn't one sole survivor from Ponevezh. They murdered every single member of that community. Over 10,000 people were killed. The only reason why the Ponevezh Rav, his name was Rav Yosef Kahneman, Rav Yosef Shlomo Kahneman, he was a Kohen, because he was in Israel visiting his son at the time. So he wasn't there. He was the chief rabbi of Ponevezh. When he was the chief rabbi, he was a super genius. He was a student of the Chafetz Chaim, and he had a capacity which is not to be believed. And besides being a genius in Torah, he was a super administrator, a fundraiser, one of a kind of fundraiser. In the 1920s, he already went to South Africa, to the various communities, to raise money for the various institutions in Ponevezh in Europe, whether it was the girls' school, the boys' school, the graduate school, whatever it was, to underwrite, to support the community. Because most of the Jews in South Africa were all Lithuanian Jews. They came from Lithuania. After everything was destroyed, he was in Israel. He lost 8 children, were murdered, his wife and his 8 children. He had one son who was in Israel at the time because he was conscripted to the Russian draft and he had to flee. So he went to Israel. So he went to visit that son. And when he was visiting that son, that's when they closed the borders of Europe. And that's why all the people, they were killed. So after the war, the Ponevezh Rav, you'd think a man like that would be depressed, he'd be down, he'd give up. He says, I have to rebuild everything that was destroyed. And he goes to Bnei Brak. Bnei Brak in 1944, 45, was basically sand dunes. That's all it was. And he's walking around with somebody else and he says, you see here, I'm going to build an elementary school. Here, I'm going to build a girls' school. Here, I'm going to build an orphanage. Here, I'm going to build a high school. Here, I'm going to build college level. Here, I'm going to build a graduate school. And he keeps talking. Firstly, he doesn't have 2 nickels to rub together. It's right after the war. all the survivors are coming to Israel, and it's still under British rule. They can't even break the blockades to even get in there. And he keeps saying, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do this. So somebody says to Rabbi Kahaneman, Zecher Tzadok Livrocha, Rabbi, you're dreaming. You're dreaming. He says, I want to explain you something. Some people dream when they sleep. I dream when I'm awake. And everything he said, he did beyond that. Didn't let up. He built the most advanced, sophisticated yeshiva in Israel, produced the highest caliber students, Talmidei Chachomim. Until today, it is that. He was so spiritualized, so great. He had such mentoring from the Chavetz Chaim and all these kinds of people. Even the wake state, he didn't allow all that stimuli to interfere with his level of clarity, what he has to do. And he saw it right, exactly. Did not get distracted. Like the Mishnah tells us, if you're studying Torah and you take a break, say, how beautiful is that tree? He had no time to notice how beautiful the tree was. He had one objective. We got to reestablish Torah. We got to reestablish the Jewish people after the Holocaust. That's it. Nothing else, nothing other than that. He was in New York raising money in the early 50s, and he was on the subway, and he had a tremendous amount of money with him. And some, whatever you want to call them, hooligans noticed the rabbi, and they figured he may have money, and they're gonna rob him. They're gonna victimize him. He's on the train. He was a very smart man. So what does he do? He understands he's being followed. So his next stop, what he's do? He gets off the train. So of course they get off the train. As soon as the door's about to close, he jumps right back on the train. He's out of the station. He'd never missed a beat. There's a story in the 50s. He went to South Africa, whether it was Durban or it was Johannesburg, to raise money to build a girls' school. Girls' school. Said he was a Jew there. He was a very traditional Jew, but he says, I don't believe in all this Torah study. I'll give it on one condition, that the students, when they study Judaism, they have to study with bare heads. They cannot cover their heads. And then I'm willing to give as much money as needed to build that kind of school. Panovich Rebbe says, you want to shake hands on it? He says, definitely. I'll even give you a document that will cover the full expense of building that school. They shake hands. He says, okay, I'm building a Beis Yaakov for 1,000 girls. Not one of those students will go with the head covered. You got it? That's how he built Beis Yaakov. He was always 3 steps ahead of most people. Torah sages, people who are divinely inspired, that they come upon truths is not through their intellectual faculty. They're endowed. Because who they, so therefore, as I said, all the stimuli doesn't interfere with that endowment. If it goes through the brain, through the brain, which is the faculty to understand, there's so many other things that we understand or we don't understand, therefore we have a problem. But if it's coming as an endowment from the outside, you see it. And when it comes from the outside, it penetrates the person totally. It consumes the person. Therefore, it creates a drive that there's nothing comparable to what the person cannot be stopped. That's how determined the person becomes once he has them. It's what we call siyata d'shmaya, divine assistance. Now, I mentioned that this month that we're in right now is called the month of Elul. Elul is a Babylonian Persian word. It's not a Hebrew word. The months of the year are not Hebrew words. When we came back from exile from Babylon, our Hebrew was a jargon. We had many other things intermingled in our Hebrew. That's the reason why the men of the High Assembly had to author a uniform text in Hebrew, which is what we call the Amidah. Because Rambam writes, since the Jews no longer spoke that pure Hebrew, because it was interspersed with other languages, when you speak to God, you have to speak his language. The holy tongue is Hebrew. Therefore, they chose the words and exactly how it has to be expressed to activate the various forces to be able to make the request, supplicate, and Hashem would respond. That's the understanding. So we mentioned the other day, the word Elul is an acronym. For something King Solomon says in the Song of Songs, Ani Ladodi V'Dodi Li. Aleph is Ani, Ladodi, I am to my beloved, and my beloved is to me. Now, a person has a number of things to do on Rosh Hashanah. It's a day of judgment. We do teshuva. We repent. We pray to God. We spend a good part of the day in synagogue praying. And also, we give charity. We commit ourselves to do chesed. Teshuva, tefillah, tzedakah, maviru esros hagzera. We call out repentance, teshuva, tzedakah, charity, utefillah, mavirin esros hagzera. Takes away the evil of the decree, the negative part of the. So if we engage in all three, we're able to address what has to be addressed. So the allusion, where it's alluded to teshuva in the Torah I mentioned the other day, there's a pasuk we just read, a verse a few weeks ago, where Moshe Rabbeinu says, at the end of time when Mashiach comes, God will circumcise your heart and the hearts of your children. He will circumcise your heart now. Just first the letters. Umol Hashem, God will circumcise. Es levavcha. Aleph is Es, levavcha is lamed. U levav. Again, vav lamed. That's Elul. What is the circumcision of the heart? So Ramban writes on location that when Mashiach comes, there will no longer be choice. Why? Because all evil will come to an end. It's going to be expunged from existence. No longer evil. And a person will naturally do one thing, only serve God through Torah mitzvahs. Torah and fulfill the commandments at the most advanced level. That's going to happen when the coming Mashiach. Man will no longer have interest in anything but serving God. And the effect of the tree of knowledge, the evil of ingesting that fruit, will totally be extracted, be purged from us. That's what that verse is talking about. When will God circumcise our hearts, the hearts of our children? When Mashiach comes. That's what it's going to be. And just as Adam, before he ate of the tree of knowledge, he naturally only gravitated to do the will of God, then it'll be the same thing. Of course, there will no longer be that covering of the heart. We'll have, like the prophet says, you will no longer have a heart of stone. You're going to have a heart of flesh, which has senses, has feeling. You feel it. You internalize it easily. So now it's very interesting. Elul, so this is an allusion to the month of Elul. Ani ladodi dodi li. What is God saying? I am to my beloved and my beloved to me. If you go and you take any level of initiative to indicate your interest in God, having a relationship, God says, I will be to my beloved. If my beloved is to me, I will be to my beloved. Meaning we're able to open channels which are not imaginable, channels of divine assistance to help us, to pull us out of the muck, to pull us out of that quicksand that's pulling us down and bring us to an atmosphere which we're able to inhale and absorb and appreciate the potential of our own spirituality. That's what the month of Elul is about. Throughout the year, you take initiative. It's like blasting away mountains. That's what you have to go through. Elul, you just ignite that charge, the mountain just falls away. That's all. And God comes along, picks up all the debris, clear road, straight to the destination. That's what Elul is. There's a special divine assistance to give us that ability to appreciate it and to give us clarity that we can embrace and partake of things that we can't partake during the year. That's what the divine assistance of Elul is. To do teshuva. It's interesting. So what is the level of divine assistance during Elul in today's day and age before the coming of Mashiach? It has a semblance of what's going to be at the time of Mashiach. A semblance. Because where is it alluded to? It's alluded to in the verse, when Mashiach comes, when all evil will come to an end. This is the opportunity now. Many years ago, I was walking with Eli Wiesel in Israel, and we were both staying in the King David Hotel. We together had eaten Shabbos lunch at someone's home, and we're walking back. It was about a 25-minute walk. And Eli Wiesel was a Holocaust survivor. He was in Auschwitz as a young boy, and he came from a very, very religious family. And he was born in Hungary. And he entered into the war, Hungary, the last year of the war, 1944. And he had a genius mind. He had tremendous abilities. And he had a very good friend who was a childhood friend of his, who later became authored Torah works, started a community, a Hasidic Jew, because he himself came from a Hasidic community, Hasidic family. And after the war, many of the survivors, they ended up in Paris. They were in Paris after the war for about a year or two. And then after Paris, they went to different parts of the world, to the United States, South America, to Israel, wherever they went. Paris had every level of representation there. And he told me that he met a certain philosopher, not a Jew, who was maybe at the Sorbonne or something. And he was very impressed with this person as a philosopher, seeing things a certain way. And he was taken by him. And this philosopher offered to mentor him, to take him under his wing. And his friend, I'm not going to mention the name, he's not alive any longer. Neither of them are alive. He says, look, that's not the direction I want to go. Because I go in that direction, ultimately, I'm going to abandon my Judaism and I give up many things I don't want to give up. So I don't even want to go there. Eli Wiesel says to me, I went there. And I was taken by this person. He says, I want to tell you today, and I regret that I ever went. Tell me what he said to me. I regret that I ever went there. He wrote all these books on the Holocaust. He says to me, I regret I ever went there. I wish I would have listened to my friend and gone with my friend. Because his life took a different turn. His family life, his communal life, his involvement. That's what he said to me. But if you have the clarity, his friend had the clarity. He had it in his gut. I'll tell you a story. Many years ago, I said a shir at George Rohr's office, going back now 35 years ago. And it was in Ramchal. Ramchal's work was called Derech Hashem, the Way of God. It was a semi-Kabbalistic work. And there's one of the people who attended the shir was a producer of advertisements for TV. That's what he did. And he would attend it. And at that time, he wasn't fully observant, this person. Today, he's fully observant. And he told me he's going to invite somebody to come to the class, an elderly man who's a TV producer, television producer. I said, fine. Whenever I give a class, I always was there maybe 15 minutes before the class starts. I'm in the boardroom where I give the class, And this man walks in. He must be a man in his mid to upper 60s. And I knew his name was Mr. White because I knew he was coming. So he walks in, and I look up, and I see he has his head's not covered. Man is up in his upper 60s. And I say, are you Mr. White? So right away he starts getting a little nervous. This is a Kabbalistic class. How do I know he's Mr. White? So he says, how do you know I'm Mr. White? I said, very simple. I recognize all the people who come to the class. I knew there was a Mr. White coming. So so I assume you're Mr. White. That's how I know. It has nothing to do with the subject matter we're studying over here. I said, for that, you got to go ask Larry Diamond. He'll teach you the other stuff. I don't teach that. So what happened was he sits down and he starts talking. He's there maybe 15 minutes, half an hour before the class. And he says, I want to tell you something. I, as a Jew, I'm a universal human being. I accept all members of the human race. You could be white, you could be Caucasian, you could be Oriental, you could be black. To me, they're all okay, fine. And he says to me, but I got a little bit of a problem. I said, what's your problem? He has a nephew who's living in Florida, who's engaged to marry a non-Jewish girl. And he has a problem with it. And he's written him endless letters to discourage the relationship. He can't get him to leave it. And he's going to marry this non-Jewish girl. So I said, I don't understand what you just finished telling me. It doesn't make a difference. Jew, non-Jew, green, black, whatever color. They're all the same. So if that's the case, I said, so why are you upset? Why does it bother you if he's married? She's a decent person. She has ethics and morals. Why should it bother you, according to what you're telling me? All men are created equal. What's the problem? He says, but it bothers me. I said, let me ask you a question. Was your grandfather an Orthodox Jew? He says, yes. He says, I wasn't raised Orthodox. My grandfather and my bubby, they were Orthodox. They lived up in the Bronx. And every Friday night we used to go there, and I had gefilte fish and chicken soup and knedlich and matzah balls and roast chicken. He said, I still could remember those moments. I said, good. Not only that, he founded an Orthodox shul in the Bronx. This is what he's telling me. So I said, I want to tell you the difference between you and your nephew. I said, your Judaism's in your gut. It's the matzah balls and the roast chicken and the gefilte fish. The way your nephew was raised, all men are created equal. It's not in his gut. It's not in his emotion. As long as you're an ethical, moral person, doesn't make a difference what you are, Jewish, not Jewish. He doesn't even know what the word Jewish means, other than pedigree. But as a human being, it's all the same. Therefore, from today, tomorrow, forever, as much as you try to discourage him, he doesn't even understand the language you're talking to him. You have to have a sense of what it is. You have no sense unless he sees the woman as a bad person or not compatible, he's going to marry her. That's the difference in you and your nephew. So then he says to me, he says, I'm working on a program on PBS. It's called Genesis. I said, what is this about? He says, we have a panel, a rabbi, a priest, a nun, a psychologist, and a social worker. And we discussed the dynamics of the families of the Bible, of the book of Genesis. Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, Abraham, Ishmael and Isaac, Rebecca. We speak about the family dynamic, and we speak about it. And I said, what's the purpose of this program? Because we want people to watch it, to see the family dynamic and how it's discussed. And we want people to ask questions, because people don't ask questions. So I said to him, and after they ask the question, where do they get the answer? They may ask the question, but where are they going to get the answer? He says, something? We never thought of that. Where are they going to get the answer? Got it? This is literally the blind leading the blind. We want them to ask questions. Now I ask the question, what am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to jump off a building. If I don't have the answer, what am I supposed to do? Take a sedative to put my brain out of commission. What am I supposed to do? That's exactly what you're holding, where the world is holding. Because if you don't have an answer, you go in every direction. And the answer and the question becomes the answer. If that's the case, therefore it's this way or that way. Maybe upside down doesn't make a difference. You don't know the difference in what's up or what's down. Second.